Hello, and welcome to another week of the LA Times College Football Roundtable. I'm your host, Ryan Kartje, our USC beat writer, joined as always by Ben Bolch, our UCLA beat writer, who had a bye this weekend. Ben, how'd you spend the bye?
I spent it teaching some students at the Daily Bruin, interns. We had a group of about 30. Great group, really enjoyed doing that, but definitely made it feel like not a weekend off.
I can relate to that, having chased a 1-year-old for most of the weekend. Given that USC played on Friday, so we both actually had Saturday and Sunday. Huge bounce back moment for USC in a 42-20 win over Rutgers. That's not to say that this changes the direction of the season. Rutgers is pretty much a collapsing team at this point, it seems. Their defense really seems to be falling apart over recent weeks. Lost to UCLA, lost to USC now. But nonetheless, a big moment just for USC's confidence, I think. Not that really anyone saw it. The beginning of it was cut off by the World Series, and the end of it for East Coasters ended just a tick before 3 a.m. So I'm sure there was a lot of people on that side of the coast watching USC. But nonetheless, a happy moment for USC. Ben, I don't know how much of the game you caught. Hopefully, you were doing something better than watching it at midnight Pacific Coast time. But what did you think just seeing USC bounce back?
Yeah, I did. I'll be honest, I didn't watch the game, but I was kind of tracking the score to see if Rutgers could make it interesting. And it looked like there was maybe a moment in the third quarter where it was still kind of in doubt, but or some point in the second half. But pretty much what I expected. Rutgers, overwhelmed. The talent disparity was just too much. But just judging from what I saw, it did look like a good bounce back for USC, and obviously a game they have to have going forward to avert the total collapse that is still possible this year. But that was one that just have to have.
Yeah, had this gone wrong, it would have been, a colossal disaster. And we're talking about a lot of different things today in this roundtable. But uh, nonetheless, there was that moment, like you mentioned, in the third quarter, where you could tell everyone in the crowd was just kind of clenching up. Like Rutgers cuts it to one touchdown, and then Makai Lemon, a USC sophomore receiver, streaks across the field, catches a crossing route, and takes it 70 yards within striking distance of the end zone. Miller Moss runs it in shortly after that, and USC is off. But there was that moment, and I think it was important for USC to sort of break through that, especially in the big way that it did. And in the process, it seems like they found a number one wide receiver in Makai Lemon. That receiver room looked so deep with such young talent at the beginning of the year, and that group's just been kind of inconsistent. You've had breakout games for Jacoby Lane, a couple big moments for Deuce Robinson. Zachariah Branch has really struggled at moments with some drops and some tentativeness. But then you see Makai Lemon just always open, it seems like, since he returned from the concussion he had suffered against Michigan. And yeah, I think that's important for this USC offense. I know Lincoln Riley has said in the past that you don't necessarily need a number one receiver, you can't force it, but one really seems to have emerged in Makai Lemon. And I think just the way Miller Moss operates, I think to have sort of a security blanket he knows is going to be open is really important just to his process. And he looked a lot better in this game because of it.
Yeah, and transitioning to UCLA a little bit here, they had a bye week last week, and I will say they seem to be really rejuvenated. They were running around. I've never seen kind of like so much kind of joy in the program, which is weird to say. But my point in saying this is I think the mood around the program is in a really good place right now, coming off that victory at Rutgers and a bye week to kind of restore and recharge. But, huge game this week against Nebraska. Can they win at Nebraska? I thought Nebraska was kind of going into the tank. They did lose to Ohio State, but man, they had a chance late in that game to win it, and through an interception and to seal the defeat. But very impressive loss, if there is such a thing, for Nebraska. Now, some interesting notes going into this game this week. Matt Rule was UCLA's D-line coach while Deshaun Foster was playing here, and also Tony White, the defensive coordinator. It's well known he was a candidate to succeed Chip Kelly at UCLA. So, and he was a teammate of Deshaun Foster. So there's a little bit of overlap there. And it was funny today at practice. I asked Deshaun Foster how well he knew Tony White and Matt Rule, and he deadpanned, "I don't know them." And like all the reporters kind of looked at each other. He really sold it. We were like, "What?" But then he said, "No, I'm just kidding." And of course, he knows them and went on to compliment both of them. But it's going to be interesting to see if Tony White, really is on his A game with the defense this week to show UCLA administrators that, hey, you picked the wrong guy, and I was, the candidate that should have prevailed there. A lot of the fan base feels that way. So that'll be an interesting side note to watch this week. I think that Nebraska at home might be a little bit too much for UCLA now. I think that their freshman quarterback's kind of coming into his own a little bit and showing incremental improvement. So I think I'm gonna pick the Cornhuskers to win this one, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was close.
Have you seen Dylan Raiola's Patrick Mahomes impressions?
I have not. Is that something to
His
behold?
his pregame ritual is dead on Mahomes copy. So, and I don't think that was an accident. I'll say that he was getting some grief online for it. We'll say that
Okay,
earlier
I
this
can't
season.
look great to check that out. Thanks for the heads up.
I will say Nebraska's home atmosphere is one of my favorite in the Big Ten. Really, just an awesome place to watch a football game. Great fans, so nice. Some of the nicest fans I've ever encountered. But they've sold out. I forget what their record is. They mention it before every game, but they've sold out that stadium like an insane number of games in a row.
Were
Really cool
you
place.
covering UCLA when they played there in 2013?
I
Because
think that's what it was. Yep.
Yeah, because we talked about that today because that was the game where I think Nick Pasquale had just died, and
Yes.
Nebraska honored him with a helmet decal, and they released 200 golds and blue balloons, and just an incredible gesture, heartwarming gesture. That I asked Coach Foster about it today, and he just said it just goes to show you what an incredible fan base they have. So I do look forward to always, enjoy being around nice people. I have all of my interactions with the fan bases so far this year have been good. It's interesting though. I'm trying to look up this stat. UCLA, every road game they've played at this year have all been sellouts. I wonder if how many teams in the nation can have that distinction, but it's very interesting. It's certainly going to be another sellout this week. So, but UCLA actually has played probably their best football on the road. They've got both their wins there and played a great first half against LSU and was mildly competitive against Penn State. So I'll be interested to see if they can keep that momentum and trend going forward. And if they do, then maybe they can pull the upset.
USC has not done its best work on the road this season, but they are a little closer to home this weekend. And one of my favorite road trips on the now Big Ten slate, I guess, also the Pac-12 was one of my favorites, heading to Seattle to take on Washington. This is a really interesting game to me for where this USC team is heading. 'Cause they certainly have the talent to beat Washington. That's not hasn't been a question all year. But Washington kind of matches up with USC in a way that I think might give USC a little trouble. This is a pretty good Washington pass defense. At one point, I don't know if they still are, but at one point was the number one pass defense in the country within the past couple of weeks. So I do think that Lincoln Riley has struggled to adjust to defenses that give him more running room versus room in the passing attack. So that'll be interesting. I think this is a big Woody Marks week, assuming Lincoln Riley does make that adjustment. He's already, every week is kind of a big Woody Marks week at this point, but I could really see them leaning on him and also maybe a little bit more Quentin Joyner in the run game. So I think USC has the juice to win this game, but I do question, with the injuries on defense, we don't know what's going to happen in the secondary. They presumably lost Nate Clifton for some time. He was, defensive tackle, was in a boot after the Rutgers game. So really just, assaulted with injuries on all sides on the defense. And now Washington, isn't really setting the world on fire offensively, but really just a strange game coming up. And I'm curious to see how USC just sort of reacts on the road. But I believe this is the last weekend of road trips for us this year. Is that true? Do you have another one?
No, we go to Seattle. We go to Seattle
Oh,
in a couple of weeks. Yeah.
well, that's the last road trip for you. This is the last road trip for me, other than heading across town to the Rose Bowl later in the season. But I think USC is going to be pretty happy staying close to home for the rest
Yeah,
of
I'll
the
be
year.
interested to see what Jed Fish has cooked up in this game. He's always got some trick plays. Obviously, he was the offensive coordinator at UCLA for a year before starting his head coaching career. But kind of a up and down year for them. But I think they're probably a little bit better than their record. So I think they're definitely going to challenge SC in this game, and I think this is one of those coin flip games.
Jed Fish always giving Lincoln Riley trouble, even at Arizona as well. Well, Ben, glad you had a nice, relaxing bye week. Hope you enjoy the trip to Nebraska. I'm off to Seattle, and we will see you guys again next Monday.